I didn't notice when my life became quiet, not peaceful, just empty of questions. I had a routine that worked. Up at 6, coffee, black, gym before work. Emails answered before anyone else logged on. People respected that. They called it discipline. I called it control. Control was safer than curiosity. Curiosity asked things I wasn't prepared to answer. I lived alone, but not in a way that felt lonely. At least, that's what I told myself. Loneliness requires awareness. I had learned how to stay busy enough not to notice. My apartment was clean, too clean, nothing left out, nothing unfinished, no signs that another person had ever stayed long enough to leave a trace. I used to think that meant I was independent. Now I'm not so sure. Her name was Julia. I didn't meet her in a dramatic way. No spark, no collision, no moment I replayed later. We met because she replaced someone. She joined our team on a Monday, introduced herself with a calm voice and a smile that didn't try to impress anyone. That stood out more than it should have. She didn't overshare, didn't perform, didn't apologize for taking up space. I noticed her because she didn't try to be noticed. At first, she was just another colleague, efficient, quietly competent, the kind of person who made meetings shorter. I appreciated that. What I didn't appreciate was the way she asked questions. Not the loud kind, the thoughtful ones, the kind that made people pause. During our third meeting together, she looked at me and said, "Why do we keep choosing the safe option when it doesn't solve the problem?" The room went quiet, not awkward, alert. I answered something polished, something logical, something that kept everything exactly where it was. She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. That bothered me more than disagreement ever had. Over the next few weeks, we worked closely. Late hours, deadlines that refused to cooperate. The kind of pressure that usually pushed people into predictable roles. I stayed efficient. She stayed curious. One evening, we were the last two in the office. The lights dimmed automatically. The city outside looked tired. She leaned back in her chair and said, "Do you ever get the feeling you're really good at surviving, but not great at living?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unexpected. "That's a strange thing to say at work," I replied. She smiled. "I guess I don't turn that part off very well." I should have redirected the conversation. I usually did, but something about the honesty in her voice slowed me down. "I think surviving is underrated," I said. "It keeps things manageable." She studied me for a moment. "Manageable for who?" she asked. That question stayed with me longer than it should have. Over time, small habits formed. Coffee breaks that aligned too perfectly. Walks to the subway that stretched a little longer. Silences that didn't rush to fill themselves. We never crossed a line, not outwardly, but something shifted internally. I started noticing when she wasn't there. The office felt flatter, less dimensional. I didn't tell anyone about that. I didn't even tell myself. One night, after a particularly long day, she said, "You know, you don't talk about yourself much." "I talk plenty," I replied. "About work." She nodded. "That's not what I meant." I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the urge to deflect, to joke, to redirect. Instead, I said nothing. She didn't push. That was worse. "You don't owe me anything," she added gently. "I just wondered." On my way home that night, the city felt louder than usual. Not in sound, in implication. I realized something uncomfortable. I had built a life that asked very little of me emotionally, and suddenly someone had noticed. I told myself it didn't matter, that work connections fade, that curiosity passes. But a quiet part of me knew better. This wasn't about her. It was about the way I'd arranged my life so no one could ask who I really was when the structure fell away. And the worst part? After that, I wasn't sure I became aware of things I'd trained myself not to notice. The quiet between conversations, the weight behind casual questions, the way certain moments asked for more than efficiency. Julia didn't change. I did. I started rehearsing conversations that never happened, answers to questions she hadn't asked yet, explanations I wasn't ready to give. At work, everything stayed smooth. Deadlines met, projects delivered. On the surface, nothing was wrong. Underneath, something loosened. She began arriving earlier. Or maybe she always had, and I just started noticing. We'd share the elevator in silence. Not awkward, loaded. One morning, she broke it. "You don't like elevators, do you?" I looked at her. "What makes you say that?" "You breathe differently in here." That caught me off guard. Most people didn't notice details like that. I shrugged. "Too many people. Not enough exits." She nodded. "That makes sense." It wasn't the answer that mattered. It was the fact that she accepted it without trying to fix me. A week later, she asked if I wanted to grab coffee. Not the work kind, the intentional kind. I hesitated too long. She noticed. "Only if you want to," she added. "No pressure." Pressure wasn't the problem. Possibility was. We went anyway. A small place near the office, quiet enough to hear your own thoughts if you weren't careful. She talked about her childhood, not in a heavy way, just honestly. Parents who loved her but didn't always listen, learning early to ask better questions. I listened. That part came easily. When she paused, I knew it was my turn. I felt it like a held breath. "So," she said gently, "what shaped you?" The answer rose up fast. Prepared. Safe. "My career," I said. "The choices I made." She waited, didn't move on. "That's what you built," she said. "I'm asking what shaped you." Something in my chest tightened, old, familiar. "I don't really think about that," I replied. A lie so practiced it barely registered. She didn't call me out. She just nodded. "Most people don't," she said. That night, I dreamed of a house I didn't recognize. Rooms closed off. Lights on behind doors I refused to open. I woke up before sunrise, heart racing. At work the next day, I snapped at someone, quick, uncharacteristic. The room went quiet. Julia caught my eye. Concern, not judgment. After the meeting, she approached me. "You okay?" I almost said yes. Habit reached for it automatically. Instead, I said, "I don't know." The words surprised both of us. She didn't smile, didn't soften it. She just said, "That's allowed." That simple permission unsettled me. Later that week, she told me she'd be leaving the team. A transfer. Another city, better opportunity. I congratulated her, professionally, efficiently. Inside, something dropped. "You don't seem surprised," she said. "I try not to be," I replied. She studied me. "There's something you don't say," she said quietly. I felt the familiar urge to close off, to protect the structure. "What would it change if I did?" I asked. She considered that. "Maybe nothing," she said. "Maybe everything." That night, I stayed late. The office empty. Lights humming. For the first time, I didn't feel in control of my own distance. I realized something unsettling. Avoiding connection hadn't kept me safe. It had just delayed the impact. Her last day came faster than I expected. Or maybe I'd been pretending it wasn't coming at all. The office felt different. Lighter. Like a place that already knew someone was leaving and had accepted it. She cleaned out her desk slowly. Not ceremonially. Just attentively. As if she respected the time she'd spent there. I watched from my side of the room, telling myself it wasn't my place to interrupt. That professionalism mattered. That timing was wrong. I was good at finding reasons. When she finally stood up, box in her arms, she looked around once more, then at me. "You don't have to say anything," she said. "I know," I replied. A pause. Then she added, "But you could." Something in me shifted. Not dramatically, not courageously. Just enough. "Can we talk?" I asked. She smiled, relieved, not hopeful, just open. We went outside. The city was busy, indifferent, perfect for a conversation that didn't want witnesses. "I don't do this well," I said. "I know," she replied. Not unkindly. "I've spent a long time building a life that doesn't ask much from me," I continued. Efficiency, order, distance. She listened, the way she always had. "And you noticed," I said. "That scared me more than I expected." She nodded. "Being seen usually does." I didn't want to need anything, I admitted. Needing felt like losing. She waited. Let me finish. I don't know what this is, I said, or what it could have been. That's okay, she replied. I wasn't looking for certainty. The honesty in her voice settled something in me. I'm not asking you to stay, I said. I just didn't want silence to be the last thing between us. She smiled softly. I appreciate that. We stood there for a moment, two people who had touched something real without grabbing it. I hope you keep asking yourself the questions you avoid, she said, and I hope you let someone hear the answers someday. Then she left. No drama, no promises, just a wave. That night, I went home and sat in the quiet, the same quiet as before, but it felt different now. It no longer protected me. It waited. In the weeks that followed, I noticed changes, small ones. I stayed in conversations longer. I admitted uncertainty. I stopped pretending that control was the same as peace. I didn't suddenly become open. I became available. I realized something important. You don't change because someone stays. You change because someone showed you that you were worth staying for. Julia didn't give me a new life. She showed me the one I'd been avoiding. And for the first time, I didn't rush to rebuild the walls. I let the questions sit, unanswered, alive.